Greetings to all listeners of radio, Nash Holos Ukrainian Roots Radio. My name is Daria Lysenko, and today I offer you to continue delving into the atmosphere of Ukrainian cinema and culture. Our special guest, Юлія Федів, will help us with this. Yuliia is a Ukrainian culture and media manager, a member of the Coalition of Cultural Actors, an advisor, and the public broadcasting company of Ukraine Суспільне Ukraine, and former executive director of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation. Yuliia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yuliia, as you know, Mstislav Chernov's Ukrainian documentary 20 Days in Mariupol recently won the Oscar. Disney Entertainment initially cut out the award of this nomination and then later decide to include it in the shortened international version. What do you think caused them to change their minds?
I think the main issue was the awareness, which was raised by the public broadcaster and also by the civil society of Ukraine, not only in Ukraine, but also all over the world. And it's a sign that we have this support, not only from the politicians, but also from the people of other countries. And also the public broadcaster is a part of the European Board of Public Broadcasters, and it also like our voices matter on the international level. So I think the joint combination of Ukrainian cinema industry and the representatives of different cinema productions, the letters which were sent by the public broadcaster and other broadcasters, and all over the world, the civil society organizations, I think hopefully it will influence the final cut, which will be issued already, including also our movie in it.
Thank you. Interview for Nash Holos Ukrainian Roots Radio, media expert Roman Balachii recently noted that currently high-quality Ukrainian cinema is being shot against rather than thanks to state support. And again, he mentioned 20 Days in Mariupol as an example. And the development of film art requires financial assistance from the state that he mentioned. Do you think it is appropriate to allocate state funds for Ukrainian films and other cultural projects in the condition of war, when there are other urgent problems, in particular with ensuring the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine?
First of all, we need to understand that it's not only the war on the battlefield, it's information war, and it's war for our identity and our existence as Ukrainians. So the culture is the main asset of which relocate all main features of our identity. So through culture, we can raise a voice and show that we Ukrainians have our own statehood, our own culture, our own language, that we are different as our enemy on the other side of the border. And also we need to understand that our enemy invests billions of dollars into their culture and information policies, and they know how important it is to influence the people's minds, not only within their country and our country, but also within the whole world. That's why we as Ukrainians need to understand that we not only need to invest in weapons, which really it's important to maintain our fight on the battlefield, but also we need to invest in culture and information policy in Ukraine, and also in our cultural diplomacy abroad. And 20 Days in Mariupol is one of the signs that it's really, really important. to raise awareness through movies, through theatrical performances, through visual art and other means of art, in order to people not to forget that Ukrainians are still fighting and Ukrainians are still waiting for any kind of support. So some countries can support us with weapons, and other countries can support us with investing in our culture and information policy and investing in our people, because actually Ukraine is not only the territory, it's furthermore the people of Ukraine who are constantly losing their lives, and also they dedicated their lives to fight against the enemy. And most of the cultural managers and artists, they are also now on the battlefield. And at the same time, the Russian cultural manager and Russian artists are traveling around the world and brainwashing the minds of other people of other countries. So that's why we need to fight on all fields. And I think the culture and information is a crucial sphere where we need to dedicate state money or money of our supporters from other countries.
Thank you, Yulia. I cannot not agree with you because it's really true. And my question is about, is it possible to change average Ukrainian mind about culture as a third thing in Ukraine and the world?
You know, when you have a lot of money, it's easier to discuss where to invest, because you have a choice. When you are lack of money, each penny means a lot. And we are in the situation when Ukraine has lack of money and has a lot of sphere where to invest this money. The foremost, defense and army, then the economy and social policy supporting human capital. And that's why in this regard, culture is always not the first in the list. But at the same time, we have different instruments how to invest money into culture and information policy. Nevertheless, it's not only investment in tangible stuff, like building new museums or theaters, which could be now under questions, but we can invest mostly in intangible. And intangible is people. So it's the same as to invest in social policies. So I think we just need to be straightforward and put more information in the media to the people. What is the meaning of each penny invested actually in culture, and it's not only the big events like Oscar or Olympic Games, for example, but it's also the question of everyday life, because nevertheless, during the war, when we talk about mental health, we talk about culture, yes, because when you listen to music, when you watch a movie, and it doesn't matter, you're on the battlefield or you are home with your children, etc., you need to restore, and culture also helps you to restore and also helps you to better understand what you are fighting for. So I think the dialogues, maybe in the media or within the communities, it will help people, to understand where the tax payers' money are going to. And I think culture is crucial for this. But I think the awareness now is higher because a lot of people understand that we are fighting for identity, and identity means culture. And I see it within communities, even in the big cities, for example, in Kyiv, during their invasion, during the last 2 years, there are more bookstores opened than restaurants or other institutions. So it's also the sign that people need bookstores to go there, to read books, to know more about our history, our culture, to speak and understand more your own language, and to rethink actually the relationship with our enemy. So I think it will be easier to allocate money into culture and media now when we talk about the dialogue with people and understanding of people.
So it's like culture and media and cultural product, it's not issue, it's a key to open the doors for international area, for example. Yeah, so, and we need to train our people, right? So it's just step by step, build their relationship and teach them how to use this cultural product for mental health and well-being, right? Okay, but again, about state financial support, if not from the state, so then where can artists find support for the creation and promotion of Ukrainian culture products? What do you think?
Actually, yes, since the Revolution of Dignity, we have already established a lot of state institutions. Yes, so now it's not only the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, but we have Ukrainian Book Institute, Ukrainian Cultural Fund, Ukrainian Institute, State Agency for Arts and Arts Education. And so they are opened and they have a different grant schemes, including also the State Film Agency. At the same time, also public broadcaster had the open calls to support media products. At the same time, we have pretty good ecosystem of international donors who are present in Ukraine and abroad, and they have a lot of open calls supporting culture activists, artists from Ukraine in collaboration with international artists or just individual grants for Ukrainians. For example, since 2015, we became a member of Creative Europe program, and it has like 2 domains, culture and media. Till now, it was only open mostly for culture, but in March, we will also broaden the program for all media and audiovisual sector. So Creative Europe is one of the main when we are talking about the integration of Ukraine to the European Union. Then UNIC is the network of the cultural institution within the European Union, like Goethe Institute, French Institute, British Council, Danish Cultural Institute, and so I can like go further when we talk about 27 EU member states. Most of them, they have special institution or they have pretty developed and strong cultural departments, which have the open calls, like, for example, Netherlands or Germany, who have like the grants for Ukrainians or for collaborations. Then USAID, and also American Embassy, they have had also open calls supporting Ukrainians. Also, when we talk about the Canadian government, they have also for creative industries special programs. Japan and Japanese government now also invest a lot in culture and cultural heritage. The international institution like UNESCO, they have also now a desk in Kiev. Before invasion, they didn't have representatives here locally in Ukraine, but since 2022 they opened a desk in Kiev, and they also work for culture heritage and creative industries. So there are a lot of donors who are opened, and there are a lot of also like donors within Ukraine, the private one, like Soros Foundation, Open Society Foundation, Isar Yednanya, and also some foundation like Lysenko Foundation or Zagori Foundation, who also have open calls for culture and cultural activists. So, for example, we have some web pages, Hurt or social prostor, where each can find the list of open calls, and when I have been in Ukrainian Culture Fund, we created UA Culture.com, the web page where we also all the time posted the open calls from our partner institution, and also articles dedicated to culture in both languages, Ukrainian and English, to promote Ukraine abroad. Now Ukrainian Institute is also doing a lot in this regard. So yeah, I think there are a lot of possibilities. Maybe the information is not spreading so fast, but our people try to organize different events, networking events, like, for example, the Grand event, which is in June, organized by Ukrainian Culture Fund, or some events organized by Ukrainian Institute. Also, we, by coalition of culture actors, are planning to organize a big event in April in order to bring together the state actors, the donors, and the civil society in order to discuss and to promote which programs would be developed further to support culture and creative industries in Ukraine. And the event of Ministry of Culture and Information Policy actually will be held tomorrow. It's called Creative Ukraine. It's also like dedicated to promote the grant schemes within Ukraine for Ukrainians.
Thank you, Yulia. So we have lots of different opportunities, right? So we can use international support, international grants. And I have a question about this. So in your opinion, maybe you can provide any advices for people who would like to apply for these international grants?
I think the main advice is to search for the information, because sometimes people are locked in the bubbles, so-called sectoral bubbles, and they think that they are no help, or they are like only state support. But actually, when you go to networking events, search even in the Google, you will find a lot of possibilities. So for now, there are many of them. So to be opened, and also to think cross-sectoral, because there are a lot of support which is not solely dedicated to culture, but, for example, culture and defense, culture and information, culture and human capital, culture and ecology. So you can go further. And the third one, like create association and networks. In Ukraine, we have these problems after we have been the colony of Soviet Union, and we are afraid now of all these, unions and etc., because they were created to control people and to censor people. But now we need to relearn how to build networks, how to build new unions, because it's always easier when you support each other and you create these networks and collaboration within Ukraine, and it will help you to find support abroad, because there are a lot of networks within European Union and internationally who are open for the national networks, like in audiovisual sector, visual sector, etc. So networking, open-mindedness, and easygoing, and last but not least, also to be open for cross-border collaborations, for the cooperation with other countries, with artists from other countries, because we need to raise a voice, and only through the joint collaborations we can show what we can actually and create something together with our partners all over the world. They are waiting also for us now. Yeah.
Yulia, thank you for naming all these tips and sharing your insights about grants and the additional support that can get artists and better understand what's going on, right? And again, about Oscar. Today, people say that the Oscar received by Mstislav Chernov's team is their first Oscar for Ukraine. However, we know that it's not the first Oscar for Ukrainians, because Czech Pelens, Volodymyr Palagnuk, Kvitka Цисик, Anatoly Kokush, Dmitro Tyomkin, Varvara Kasinska, and Yevgen Mamut, and many other, all of them have Ukrainian roots, and at one time were awarded Oscars, but as representatives from other countries, because they or their parents immigrated from Ukraine. Now we also seen an outflow of talent from Ukraine, including artists seeking safety abroad. And my question is, in your opinion, Yulia, are there any effective measures to support those cultures figures who remain in the country and to motivate those who have to left to return?
Yeah, we have these discussions all over the time, but even the donors, which I mentioned, the state and international and European one, they have programs which support both like the artists who remained in Ukraine, the artists who left Ukraine. And for example, there are such initiatives like Artists at Risk, which supports Ukrainian artists who left Ukraine in the countries through residencies or individual grants to create the works dedicated also to Ukraine, not to vanish within the artistic world of countries where they are now situated. Yes, so there are for now such grant schemes like from British Council, from Goethe Institute, Arts Link, Artists at Risk, and others. From other point of view, I think it's always like when we have the war, then it's always pros and cons that some people will never come back, and they will become the part of the artistic world of other countries. And to preserve identity, it always depends on their countries, on their cultural and minority policies, That's why I think it's important also, as I already said, networks and association, and not only within Ukraine, but also abroad, that the people of Ukraine who represents culture and media sector, they can also build networks within the countries where they are now living, and also promote the word of Ukraine through their artistic actions. Also, it's great when other people become the members or the employees of international and European artistic organization, and then influence the agenda of events they are organizing. I have witnessed myself when I was living for several times, like in Germany for 3 years or in US for 1 year, that a lot of artistic international organization which make a lot of events dedicated to Ukraine or Eastern Europe, there are a lot of employees with Russian roots. And then we question why we have some misread, about the Ukrainian history. And there are really few Ukrainians who join this institution and the employees. And I know for now that people are more open, they speak languages, they are like, in 21st century, it's easier to be multicultural. Yes, it's a trend than it was in 20th century. So I think now we can integrate into this institution. It's really important, even if you will not come back, but you will remain, as part of this international artistic community. You will raise the world about Ukraine. It will be great. As example, I can say that recently I have been to Brussels, and it was an event organized by the European Commission, but the co-organizers was Ukrainian institution, and it was really different vibe of narratives which were presented, of agenda, because the Ukrainians were put at the same level. I know it's silly maybe to say, but I remember the events even like 5 or 10 years ago, when it was always like the big brother attitude, when we were like, listen to what our European all international colleagues were presenting, and they were presenting and saying about us, and we were like only listeners. So at this event, I felt that we were like co-creators of the narratives. We were co-creators of the future of Europe as equals. And it's really important because Ukrainians were co-creators of narratives, of agenda, of the program. So so it's my main maybe like advice to integrate, to use your time abroad.
So just don't worry about that people who leave. It is your opinion. So they are already helpful for promoting Ukrainian culture.
Yes, I think we need like, yes, after, like at the same time, we need to do everything possible to remain people here. Yes. And I hope that a lot of people will come back, with a new experience, with a new contacts, and they will bring a lot for the Ukraine. But at the same time, people who are now abroad, you know, who cannot come back, I don't know, because of the personal reasons, because of the family issues, you know, each of us make their own decisions. They need not to be silent and, you know, wait when they will come back to Ukraine. I know it's also hard for them too, because when you are in other country, you need to integrate, you need to, you know, like, I don't know, earn money for your living, but at the same time, you need to use all opportunities to raise the voice about Ukraine, because Ukrainians who are here, it's not so easy to travel. You know, for me to come to Brussels, it takes like 2 days to go there, 2 days to come back, in order to take part at the event, which lasts 1.5 days, you know. So for the Ukrainians who are living there now, you know, it's much easier to organize some actions, to I don't know, to network, you know, with people there, to think about collaboration, to help Ukrainians in Ukraine to build these networks, you know, and collaborations with the countries where our diaspora is now situated. So it's like, you know, I think we need to shoot in all directions because we have no other choice. Yes, we are not so many when we combine our numbers with the numbers of our enemies. So that's why, you know, we need to do twice more to combat the propaganda, to combat the disinformation, which is done by Russia, really, really active. So it's in our hands to compete and to fight in all fields, cultural, information, and battlefield where we are fighting now.
Thank you. Thank you, Yulia. And final question, could you give some examples of Ukrainian films that should be seen by Ukrainian international viewers?
On this weekend, I have been visiting an event organized by Ukrainian Institute and Arte. Arte, it's like German, French, cultural TV channel. And it was dedicated to 12 movies, documentaries done by Ukrainian artists, audiovisual artists, which were dedicated to the situation which we are living in. So all these 12 movies will be finished during this and next year and will be presented in Ukraine and abroad. Some of them, they were already presented, intercepted in Berlinale, maybe you heard. So I think now all movies which are done by Ukrainians about Ukraine needs to be shown abroad in the cinemas of other countries. And I think our audiovisual community, they are pretty good networked, as to say, when we talk about different sectors. I think our movie industries is the best when we talk in creating association and networks and working with international counterparts. And it doesn't matter if state supports or does not support them. There are a lot of questions also here, but they are developing our own strategy for the next 5 years. They are building the networks, they are presenting on the media and cinema markets. But as I said, Intercepted, I think it would be a good movie to see, because in this movie you can hear the voices of the Russians, and which questions a lot the like big Russian culture, which are still so like adorable by some of international people. So I think Intercepted, it's a good proof, you know, to see from the first hands, as to say, what Russians think about Ukraine and why they came here, and they will not stop in Ukraine. So I think Intercepted is the best way to see this. And all of these 11 movies, I will not now take time and name all of them, but they show through the personal stories, you know, what is happening here and what Russians are doing against Ukraine. And it's genocide, it's unhuman, and it's not only about Ukraine, it's about the tyranny fighting against democracies. And the more people will watch these movies made by Ukrainians from the first side, as to say, I think the more people will understand that they need support Ukraine, Otherwise, the Russians will occupy their territories, and then we will not speak about peace for many more years ahead. So it's our joint fight against tyranny, and yes. So I think movie it's a good, it's a good data to be presented also then during the criminal procedures at the international criminal courts. Yes, because audiovisual material, I think, and audio material is the best way.
Thank you, Yulia. Thank you for joining us today. And I would like to remind all our listeners that today we talked to Юлія Федів. Yulia is a Ukrainian culture and media manager, a member of the Coalition of Culture Actors, and advisor at the public broadcasting company of Ukraine, Суспільне Ukraine, and former executive director of the Ukrainian Cultural Fund. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.